Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
All right, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Bottled Business Sense Show. I'm Rick Moscoso, one of your co-hosts today, and on the other side, we also have Mr. Bill Bernard. Bill, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, Rick. Thank you. I'm glad to have everybody back in the fold for another show. I am out of town on business, and through Rick's magic, we're able to connect up and bring both of our studios together. This will give all the viewers a really good chance to see some of the great things Rick can do in that regard. So thanks, Rick, for doing that. We have a show planned today that was actually requested by one of our viewers, a business coach in the community, and he wanted some information concerning independent contractors versus employee status. How do we go about determining some of those things and for purposes of safeguarding our business? And so I thought we'd address that on today's show. So I'm looking forward to doing that, Rick.
Awesome. All right. So welcome to everybody to the show today. If you're a first-time listener or first-time viewer, we broadcast every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time here on the BottleBusinessSenseShow.com or on Blog Talk Radio. And if you'd like to be a co-host or a guest on the show, or maybe even have a request for future shows, drop us a line at BottleBusinessSenseShow@gmail.com. So why don't we get the show rolling? And Bill has an interesting topic that he's talking about, the distinction between an independent contractor and an employee. And I got to tell you, Bill's expertise is amazing. He's able to take very complex things that, from a layman's standpoint, may be difficult to understand, but he puts it in a way that for the layman to understand. And I'm blessed to have him as a co-host, because he can take the complex and make it really easy to understand. Right?
Well, you're much too kind, Rick. I appreciate that very much. That's one of the goals of our show, is to try to condense all this stuff down so our viewers can get some way of getting their arms around it, and then if they have some additional questions or thoughts that they need to discuss, they can call the appropriate person and get some further in-depth explanation. So I thought what I'd do today in starting out on this topic is to talk about some of the mistakes or some of the confusion that might underlie classifying individuals as employees or independent contractors. And a lot of times employers, either intentionally so or just by mistake, improperly classify their employees or independent contractors as such, because there's an issue of payroll taxes, minimum wage or overtime that has to have compliance with state law. There's meal periods, there's rest breaks, there's compensation for business expenses incurred while performing the job. All of these issues are things that lead people sometimes to say, well, we don't want employees, we want independent contractors because we can avoid all of these pitfalls. And as we know, employers do not have to cover independent contractors under workers' compensation insurance, which is a big concern of theirs, because that's insurance they have to provide to their employees who are in fact injured on the job. So we need to first break this issue down, Rick, into some of the red herrings that are out there that employers are looking for in order to avoid potential liability. And I would warn employers in this sense. Don't try to make a classification based on what you can get away with. Comply with the law, and based on factors we're going to discuss here in a few minutes, you'll know whether you have an employee or an independent contractor. And once that determination is made, you got to go with it.
So, Bill, there's probably a lot of strict laws that employees need to consider, be aware of, and share with the viewers here what they should absolutely be aware of.
Well, state agencies that are involved, Rick, with the determination of employer and employee and independent contractor status. The first one would be the Employment Development Department, which is better known as the EDD. And they're concerned with employment-related taxes and things of that nature. So anything having to do with taxing the individual. And then we have the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, which is the DLSE, and they're concerned with proper wage, hour, and workers' compensation applications. So they want to make sure that if you're an employee, you have the proper benefits in terms of wage development, hours worked, whether you get the proper breaks for being an employee, and whether or not you have workers' compensation insurance by your employer. I should point out that, importantly, there's a rebuttable presumption in the state of California pursuant to the Business and Professions Code, which states that where a worker performs services that require a license, there's a presumption that that worker is an employee and not an independent contractor. That really goes into some real in-depth issues that we might want to save for another show. But if you have some sort of a professional license, you'd want to look to the Business and Professions Code to get a little more in-depth instruction, and that would be Section 7000, starting in Section 7000. So look for that. But what we're going to look for is the more common area today, where you have someone who's working with you or for you, and determinations have to be made in order to have a proper classification applied.
Okay, so once an employer understands the laws that they need to consider, now how do they determine whether someone is an independent contractor versus an employee?
Well, that's the $6 million question, and that's what we want to really attack here today, Rick. There's really no set definition for independent contractor. You must look to the interpretations that have been given by courts of law in California, and to various opinions that enforcement agencies within the state have provided over the course of many years, to decide if a particular situation warrants a classification of employee versus independent contractor. Now, those court opinions have used several factors that we now look at in order to help us make that determination. And you, as an employer, try to employ, if you will, these factors in order to help yourself come to a decision. And most oftentimes, if you utilize these factors properly, you'll be okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some of the factors. The principal one being, Rick, is control. Do you have control over the means and method of the work being performed by the individual? So let's take an example. If I hire Rick Moscoso to do my video marketing, do I tell Mr. Moscoso how to do the video marketing?
Yeah, right.
The answer would be what? No, right?
Absolutely no.
You would ask me, rather, would you not, Rick? What are my goals, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and we've discussed this in another show in depth. And of course, from that conversation, we would then start talking about what it is I want to accomplish, how I want to accomplish it in terms of my profession. But then you would take what you know in your profession and you would employ those areas of expertise, those factors that you utilize, and you would find a way to best go about accomplishing that. And you would present me with a bill, right?
Yeah.
For your services.
Correct.
So you are controlling the means and the method and the manner of what I am asking you to do. This really gets into what courts have long labeled, for lack of a better phrase, the economic realities test. We find out from a number of factors what realistically is going on from an economical standpoint in terms of who is controlling the manner, means, and method being employed to do this work, or being used to accomplish the work, I think would be a better way to say it. And in addition to control, I want to go over some other factors that lead to determining whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor. Before I do that, I'd like to take a brief break and tell you about one of our newer sponsors. Rick's familiar with this new sponsor. We have some great affiliations in the watch industry, as all of you probably know by now. And one of the principal people that we deal with, one of the principal timepiece manufacturers that we hold in high regard is a company called Strider Watches, and that's STRIDER, StriderWatches.com, and they make the Hyperdive watch, and that company is owned by Jim Skelton, who I am very familiar with and who I hold in high regard as a watch guru. Rick, I don't know if we've talked about this, but do you know some of the factors that go into making this hyperdive, and have you familiarized yourself with this at any point in time?
Not in great detail, not as much as you as a watch aficionado would. I'm more into the vanity of how a watch looks on my wrist.
Right.
But
you're into the aesthetics, and that's what most people are drawn to off the bat. But let me tell you a little bit about this watch. This watch, the Hyperdive, is a 46 millimeter case. Okay, it's a 46 millimeter case. It is made with 316L stainless steel. That means surgical stainless steel. Okay, this is not some plastic that you get in a five and dime store. It has, in addition to that, it's treated with superluminova, Swiss superluminova, which is the highest kind of glow, for lack of a better phrase, that you can get in today's watch industry. It makes the watch glow at night, and it's professionally called superluminova. It has a combination of BGW9 superluminova, which means it can glow blue in some sections. So when the watch is lit up at night, you'll see a blue aura to it. It has a sapphire crystal, the best crystal made, folks, scratch resistant. It has a multi-link 5-row bracelet. I want you to get online and Google what a multi-link bracelet and a sapphire crystal alone cost. It has a Japanese movement that rivals Swiss movements, and I believe it is the 9015 movement made by Miyota. So this watch is a composite of great materials which make it a great timepiece for a very affordable rate. So please go to StriderWatches.com, take a gander at this watch. I think you'll really enjoy it, because remember, a watch is not just something to tell time with. It provides you with, in my opinion, a work of art, a piece of jewelry. It provides you with the symphony of time on your wrist. So please go check out StriderWatches.com.
I got to tell you, Bill, if Jim ever needed a fill-in co-host, I would absolutely recommend you to step in because of your knowledge and just your passion for timepieces like this.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it's all because of Jim. I've listened to Jim for close to 10 years now, and he's a teacher, and I would love doing something like that, to be very candid. And if a miracle ever happened and Jim called on me to do that, I'd be first one at the door.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back into our topic for today, and that is classification of employee versus independent contractor. And just to pick up on where we left off, we talked about the most significant factor to be determined is that of control. Does the employer or principal, because remember, you're an employer if you have an employee relationship, you're a principal if you have an independent contractor relationship, and we can talk about that in depth in another show as well. But if you are a principal, you have an agent, and that agent is your independent contractor. If you are an employer, you have your employee. So, to determine whether or not you're an employer or a principal, controlling the right to work that's being provided, both in terms of the work done and the manner and means in which it is performed, is one of the key factors. And again, to touch upon a quick example, Rick, if I have a law firm and I hire an associate, I tell the associate what to do. I expect the associate to be well trained from law school. However, I employ my control over him to tell him what to do and in the manner in which to do it. I'm responsible for him. I provide workers' compensation insurance. I provide his wages. I provide him with a W-2 form at the end of the year as opposed to a 1099 form. Therefore, I am the employer. He is the employee. Let's take a look at some additional factors that are required. Have you got any idea, Rick, from a logical standpoint, what you think might be involved here in terms of factors that we want to consider?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that when you're determining these two classifications, one of them that as an employer that I'd want to consider is the tax ramifications.
Yes, and we'll get to a little bit of that. But what makes your business different from mine?
In what sense?
Well, you are a video marketing guru. I'm an attorney, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that those two businesses are separate and distinct from each other?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the other additional factors that we look at is whether the person performing the services, is engaged in an occupation or business distinct from that of the principal. If I'm retaining you to do work for me, I'm retaining you to do work in a business that is distinct and separate from the kind of work that I do. Okay? So we have the distinctiveness of the business in addition to the amount of control exerted. That's factor number 2. Factor number 3 would be whether or not the work performed in the regular business of the principal or alleged employer is in fact something that would be typically performed. So video marketing is not something that I typically perform as a lawyer. So therefore, that's going to be a determining factor in whether or not you are my employee or whether you are my agent. Another factor that would be considered would be the investment in the equipment or materials required. If I'm running a business, I'm providing the computer, I'm providing the desk, I'm providing the atmosphere for that individual to work. If I'm not an employer and I'm involving an independent contractor, I'm a principal involving an agent, in other words, I'm not providing the equipment or materials that's needed. Another good example, Rick, with you, who provides the materials for you when you go do a job for somebody?
Well, the physical materials I provide, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You don't come over to my house or my office to engage me or for me to engage you, and I hand you my video equipment, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So again, we've talked about 4 or 5 factors here. What's the overriding principle we're getting from this? Everything here has this underlying aura of control. Who's controlling what's going on by way of providing equipment or by way of providing expertise? We'll see as we move through this how control overlaps much of these individual factors.
Right. Well, I got I want to just have a quick question then.
Sure.
So, in the case of, well, just use our example here, you as an attorney and me as a video marketer. In general, then, from a general sense, you're talking about business to business interaction, basically, right? When one business is doing business not on behalf but for another company like yourself. If you hired me to do video marketing for you, video production for you,
right?
It's more of a business to business thing, correct?
Well, it can be, Rick, but that's a very good question. Let me give you a counter example. Let's say that I need someone to do legal work for me, but I don't need them on a full-time basis, and so I want to employ, and again, bad choice of words, I want to keep it separate. I don't employ the person, but I engage the person as a paralegal to do a couple of motions for me on a specific case. That paralegal is not going to be someone that I use on a consistent basis. It's someone that I want to come in and have do work for me on a limited basis, okay? And depending on the amount of control I exert, I might be able to classify that person as an independent contractor. That leads right into one of the next factors that you determine, or helps determine whether someone is an independent contractor or an employee, and that is the length of time for which services are engaged. So if I'm exerting very limited control over this paralegal, I employ this paralegal for a limited period of time to do a specific amount of work for me, I might very well be able to classify this individual as an independent contractor rather than an employee.
Okay.
Well, another factor would be the employee's opportunity for profit or loss depending upon his managerial skill or her managerial skill. In other words, if this employee is not involved in any management decisions, doesn't have the opportunity to share in the profit or loss of a particular company, then that person could be, that equation could go into the mix in determining whether or not that person is an independent contractor or an employee. And, you know, this all involves an accumulation of what is the degree of permanence that this person has at your business. Whether it's control or level of skill or length of time employed, we look at all of these things together and then we say, logically speaking, would it be prudent to say that this person is an independent contractor versus an employee? If you believe they're an independent contractor, if these things you believe weigh in your favor, then you issue a 1099 at the end of the year for tax purposes. And of course, these things then go down the road of normalcy, if you will, until and if somebody decides to challenge that status. And of course, that is a factor in and of itself. The method of payment. Are you using a 1099? Are you using a W-2? If you're using a W-2 and you're paying wages, that person could be considered an employee. If you're using a 1099, that is very indicative of course, an independent contractor. And I think probably, Rick, the final factor to mention would be whether or not you believe you are creating an employer-employee relationship or an independent contractor relationship. You know, there can be discussions about this and should be. And there can be some other things to consider on top of these factors that we've mentioned. All of these things go into the mix in deciding whether or not you are an employee or an independent contractor. By that I mean you have the objective factors that we've discussed. And then you have some subjective factors that you may then put down into a writing, which we're going to discuss in a minute.
Yeah.
But
well, I know. Sorry for interrupting, Bill.
Yeah.
But I know it's been your continual message that why this is so important to have an attorney help you whenever there's questions like this, as well as a good accountant that you can rely on, and that's been your mantra all along here with things like this that you need to consider, right?
That's right. That's right. You really do need to have professionals at your bedside, because you want to plan for these things before they happen in the best way you can. You sit down with your lawyer, you say, here's my goal, here's what I want to accomplish, who would be the best people for the job. If it's a long-term goal, you may be better going with some employees. You can discuss that with your attorney. If it's a shorter-term goal or a very specific specialized goal, you may want to hire an independent contractor, because you may not need somebody for any length of time in order to accomplish that one specific specialized goal. All of these things are important. And remember, how you pay the individual, we're going to keep stressing that. The degree of performance or workmanship that's required, the specialization, in other words, the length of the time for the services, the employee's opportunity to share in profit or losses of the company, whether or not the equipment and materials required to do this job is provided by you or by the individual, and of course the maximum exertion of control over the manner and means and method of accomplishing the goal. All of these things need to be analyzed and need to be discussed with your attorney prior to getting someone to do whatever task it is that you intend to accomplish.
Awesome. So we have about 10 minutes left here in the show, and I do want to cover a couple more things here with Bill. So now that you've given the viewers an idea of some of the legal considerations and distinctions between an independent contractor and employee, once we all understand that through consulting with an attorney like yourself, how do we go about formalizing these things?
Well, you would retain an attorney to do that, but you may want to add to have an attorney do a written agreement that solidifies the relationship that you have with this individual as an independent contractor or an employee. Remember that these are factors that can be subjectively inserted into a written document that establishes who it is you're hiring as an employee or who it is you're retaining as an independent contractor. But remember too, Rick, that a written agreement is not the be-all and end-all. If you have a written agreement that sets forth what you're going to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it, and you utilize these factors we've been discussing, those factors better be followed. Those ingredients better be applied, or the written agreement might mean nothing, and the courts may look to these factors, these 7 or 8 factors that we use to measure the distinction between an independent contractor and an employee, and they may look at those to make a real determination as to what this individual was to you. Mm-hmm. And that again is if there is some discrepancy between what you put in a written agreement and what the courts normally look at to make this to distinguish between these two entities, independent contractor and employee.
Yeah. So for our viewers, it's extremely important that you have somebody like Bill on your team, as far as before you even delve into something like this, to make sure that you're doing things correctly, your classifications are correct. And if you ever have any questions, Bill, what's the best way to get a hold of you to take this conversation further?
Yeah, it would be Bill at wfblegalconsulting.com, or my number is 949-413-6535 or 949-698-6222. And before I do a little bit of a recap on this, which I think is important, I want to take just a minute to give a quick shout out to our newest sponsor, another great watch brand called Android Watches. Please go and visit them at their website, which is www.android-usa.com. And take a look at their newest timepiece, or one of their newest timepieces, called the Endeavor, one that I'm actually wearing. This is a professional 200-meter diver. That means when you have a watch that's water resistant up to 200 meters, that's considered a professional dive watch. This has a hardened mineral crystal, again made with 316L stainless steel. It has a NH35A Japanese movement in it, a tremendous durable movement. And it is a 48 millimeter case, and it can be gotten for a very inexpensive price on Android's website. Android is a company owned and operated by a friend of mine called Wing Liang, and he's been in the watch industry now for quite a few years. He has worked collectively with other watch vendors, and of course makes this guy is he's so creative. He is the chief designer and owner of this company, and does all of this stuff on his own. I mean, it's incredible. If you look at his designs, go to his website and see his designs. Quality watches, and he's one of the few guys that I know making them with tungsten, heavy tungsten, which is scratch resistant. Please check out android-usa.com. And really gets a good look at some really good quality timepieces at very affordable prices.
Awesome, Bill. Why don't we wrap up the show then, and we'll talk a little bit about summarizing what we just talked about.
Yeah, let's recap. Remember that a person's services that is paid as an independent contractor without payroll deductions and without income reported by an IRS Form 1099 rather than a W-2 is of no significance whatsoever in determining the employment status. Let me recap that again. If you pay somebody on a 1099, that's indicative of being an independent contractor. If you pay somebody with a W-2 form, that's indicative of being an employee. But those factors are not determinative in and of themselves in terms of classifying someone as an employee or an independent contractor. You have to look at all of the factors. You have to sit down and make sure you know what your goals are and what you want to accomplish in terms of deciding who you want to bring on board, either as an employee or an independent contractor. Remember as well that your employer cannot change the status from that of an employee to one of an independent contractor by requiring you to assume a burden that you normally wouldn't assume. In other words, you can't all of a sudden, if you are an employee, you can't all of a sudden say, I'm going to withhold your payroll taxes and you're going to have to now report your taxes to the IRS because I'm not going to do it anymore. That doesn't make you all of a sudden an independent contractor. Your employer has to carry through with his responsibilities and obligations. And again, please remember that even if you have a written agreement, which isn't bad to have, especially if you have an independent contractor situation, you want to make sure everything is laid out and spelled out. Courts will look behind this agreement and examine all the facts that characterize the parties' real relationship. If there is some incongruency there between the agreement and the factors being employed to determine whether or not you're an independent contractor or an employee. I want to lastly just say real quick, Rick, that a person may file a wage claim with the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement. If he has a wage issue, he may file a claim with the DLSE. And it then is assigned to a labor commissioner. That commissioner then hears the case and makes a determination. And then, of course, there's there may be some other rights that you can exert as well. But you need to see a lawyer to make sure you're prepared to deal with that issue. And then finally, if you have a discrimination claim by an employer, you need to know what those are if you are in fact an employee, and we're going to talk about discrimination in another show as well. So I want to leave you with that. Make sure you consult a lawyer if you have a claim of any kind in terms of wages, hours, any kind of benefits, or if it involves discrimination, please see a lawyer. So that will kind of wrap it up, Rick.
Okay. Well, folks, again, I encourage you to get in touch with Bill. He is absolutely a pleasure to speak with, and extremely, extremely knowledgeable. And if you have any additional questions, you can contact Bill at wfbconsulting.com, or why don't you repeat your phone number again, Bill?
949-413-6535 or 949-698-6222. And the correct email is bill at wfblegalconsulting.com.
Oh, sorry.
No problem, man. I'm glad to be able to help anybody who needs it. Anybody might have a question or two. Anybody wants to really get engaged in this stuff. That's what we're here for. So, real quick, Rick, what do we have on tap for next week's show?
Well, next week we have a guest that we're going to be bringing onto the show. We mentioned this last week, and we have Sharon Masler with Masler and Associates coming on board. So, Bill, do you want to kind of introduce what we're going to be talking about with her?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about a number of different things, I believe. One is, of course, all of the great, the tax ramifications of running your business and all of the ways to make sure you operate your business properly from a tax standpoint. We're going to talk about the fact that she's got the ability with her operation to represent you should you ever have a problem with the IRS. It is a really, really great show that really concentrates on the interrelationship between some CPA issues and some legal issues, and I think emphasizes the fact, if you will, that you need these two types of professionals on board, an accountant and an attorney. So we're really happy to have her. She's extremely qualified, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything she has to say, so it'll help our viewers and listeners out in their everyday business.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have Sharon on the show next week. Folks, again, join us every Tuesday on Blog Talk Radio or on our simulcast at bottledbusinesssenseshow.com. We're on at 10 o'clock every day on I'm sorry, not every day, but that would be some work, right? We're on every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So come back and join us. We have an exciting show for next week. And Bill, any closing thoughts?
No, I just that I hope this show was somewhat helpful, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody back next week. Have a busy and prosperous week. Go get them out there, okay? Take care, everybody.
All right, take care. We'll see you next week.